You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience. You thought it was one pathetic void life you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I died, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes.
School shootings have become an all too frequent tragedy in modern society, leaving countless victims and communities devastated in their wake. The shooters responsible for these heinous acts often face a range of legal consequences, including the possibility of receiving a death sentence. But what happens when school shooters are faced with the ultimate punishment? Do they show remorse for their actions, or do they remain unrepentant until the bitter end? In this video, we'll explore the reactions of school shooters to death sentences, taking a closer look at some of the most high-profile cases in recent history. From the devastating impacts of these tragedies to the complexities of legal justice, we'll examine this sensitive issue with the goal of better understanding the multifaceted nature of school shootings. Nikolas Cruz. Nikolas Cruz is one of the most recent and widely publicized school shooters in American history. Born in South Florida in 1998, Cruz had a difficult childhood marked by a series of tragedies and struggles. His father died when he was just 6 years old, leaving him to be raised by his mother, who later died of pneumonia. After her death, Cruz moved in with a friend's family, but he struggled to fit in and was eventually expelled from school for disciplinary issues. As a teenager, Cruz's troubles continued to mount. He was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and depression, and reportedly had a history of self-harm and violent outbursts. Despite attempts at therapy and medication, Cruz's behavior continued to escalate, culminating in the tragic events of February 14, 2018. On that day, Cruz walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, armed with an AR-15 rifle. He opened fire, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others in what has been described as one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. In the aftermath of the shooting, Cruz was apprehended and charged with 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. In March 2018, prosecutors announced that they would seek the death penalty in Cruz's case, citing the severity of his crimes.
Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence.
After a lengthy trial and much public outcry, in July 2021, Cruz was sentenced to death. During the trial, you would have expected him to break down and be remorseful for his atrocities. But no, he showed little emotion, occasionally smiling or laughing, and did not testify in his own defense. While the families of the victims viewed the death penalty as a fitting punishment for such a heinous crime, others criticized the decision, arguing that it failed to address the underlying issues that contributed to Cruz's actions. In particular, mental health advocates pointed to Cruz's struggles with autism, ADHD, and depression as factors that should have been taken into account. But regardless of one's opinions on his death sentence, it's clear that the impact of Cruz's actions will be felt for years to come. And since then, the Parkland shooting has sparked renewed debate on issues like gun control and mental health care, and prompted many schools to reevaluate their safety protocols in an effort to prevent future tragedies. Adam Lanza. Adam Lanza's name will forever be associated with one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. On December 14, 2012, Lanza walked into Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, armed with multiple firearms, and proceeded to take the lives of 26 people, including 20 young children aged 6 and 7, before turning the gun on himself. Lanza's actions were very shocking and devastating, leaving an unforgettable mark on the Newtown community and the country as a whole. But what could have led him to commit such a horrific act? To understand Lanza's motives, we must first look at his troubled past. He was born on April 22, 1992, in Kingston, New Hampshire, and was the son of Peter and Nancy Lanza. From an early age, Lanza showed signs of developmental and mental health issues, including obsessive-compulsive tendencies, sensory integration disorder, and an aversion to physical contact. When his parents divorced in 2009, his mental health struggles worsened, and he became increasingly isolated and withdrawn. In the years leading up to the shooting, Lanza became more fixated on violent video games and loved to watch documentaries on mass shootings and how shooters carried out their operations. He also reportedly had an unhealthy interest in Nazi propaganda and was obsessed with collecting guns and ammunition, which was all geared toward feeding his dark fantasies. And you won't believe what happened next. On the day of the shooting, Lanza prepared to take his fantasies a little bit further. He first killed his mother in their home before driving to the Sandy Hook Elementary School armed with multiple firearms, including a Bushmaster XM15 E2S rifle. Once inside the school, he opened fire on teachers and students, ultimately taking the lives of 26 people before taking his own life as police closed in on him. Unfortunately, he killed himself before he could be given the death sentence. Still, while Lanza's exact motive for the shooting remains unclear, one we know for sure is that he was a psychopath and a very disturbed one at that. His actions have since left countless families and communities devastated, and others living in constant fear of who might be another school shooter, roaming the streets and waiting to strike. T.J. Lane. T.J. Lane was a troubled teenager who carried out a horrific school shooting at Chardon High School in Ohio in 2012. Before that fateful day, Lane had a troubled childhood and had been in and out of juvenile detention centers. He had reportedly been abused by his father and struggled with depression and anger issues for much of his life. But on the morning of February 27, 2012, Lane's struggles with mental health took a dark turn. He entered the Chardon High School armed with a handgun and with only one intention in mind: to kill. He then opened fire in the cafeteria, killing 3 students and injuring 3 others. After the shooting, Lane was caught by police and later pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder, and 1 count of felonious assault. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his trial, Lane famously wore a t-shirt with the word "killer" written on it. This display of arrogance and lack of remorse angered many of the families of the victims, who were still reeling from the tragedy. However, in a surprising turn of events, Lane showed remorse for his actions and apologized to the families of the victims. Some speculated that Lane's apology was a calculated move to avoid the death penalty, but others believed that he genuinely felt remorse for his actions. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Let's talk about one of the most infamous school shootings in modern history, the Columbine High School massacre. On April 20th, 1999, 2 students named Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold entered the high school in Colorado armed with guns, explosives, and a plan to kill as many people as possible. Over the course of the next few hours, the 2 boys carried out a horrific attack that left 13 people dead and over 20 others injured. But who were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, and what led them to commit such a heinous act? Well, both boys had a troubled history that may have contributed to their eventual actions. Harris, for example, had a history of aggressive behavior and had been in trouble with the law before. Klebold, on the other hand, had been bullied and struggled with depression. Despite their differences, the 2 boys formed a close bond and began to plan their attack in secret. They spent months amassing weapons and explosives, creating detailed plans, and documenting their plans in journals and videos. On the day of the attack, they wore trench coats and carried out their plan with ruthless efficiency, targeting both students and faculty members before turning the guns and killing themselves. In the years since the shootings, the families of the victims have struggled to come to terms with what happened. Many have spoken out about their anger and grief, while others found solace in activism and advocacy work. The Columbine shooting remains one of the most devastating events in modern history, and its impact continues to be felt to this day. Seung-Hui Cho. Seung-Hui Cho was the perpetrator of the Virginia Tech shooting, one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Born in South Korea in 1984, Cho moved to the United States with his family when he was just 8 years old. According to reports, Cho struggled with mental health issues from a young age, with his parents seeking counseling and psychiatric care for him during his adolescence. But in 2007, at the age of 23, Cho went ahead to carry out the Virginia Tech shooting, killing 32 people and injuring 17 others. The shooting took place in 2 separate attacks, with Cho using 2 handguns to carry out the killings. Before the shootings, he had sent a package containing a manifesto and videos discussing his motives to NBC News.
When the time came, I did it. I had to. This is it. This is where it all ends. And the
In the videos, he could be seen ranting and brandishing weapons, expressing his desire to hurt as many people as possible. After the shootings, Cho took his own life before he could be arrested or sentenced. As a result, he was never formally sentenced to death, but his actions left a lasting impact on the victims, their families, and the community at large. The reaction to Cho's actions and subsequent death were mixed. Some criticized the mental health system for failing to adequately address Cho's needs and prevent the tragedy from occurring. Others condemned Cho for his actions and expressed a desire for justice, despite the fact that he was never formally sentenced. As we've seen in these cases, the incident aftermath of school shootings can be deeply complex and emotionally charged. While some may argue that the death penalty is an appropriate punishment for those responsible, others believe that it only perpetuates the cycle of violence and offers little in the way of true justice. Regardless of one's stance on the death penalty, it's clear that the impact of school shootings is long-lasting, affecting the lives of countless victims, families, and communities. Do you think the perpetrators of these crimes deserved the death sentence? Share your thoughts in the comments.